The room went quiet the second I bowed, set the carafe down, and answered in Japanese, clear enough to ring off the glass. Up until then, I was just the black waitress topping off wine, invisible by design, a body moving through money. In their heads, Kamiko Hayashi was a prop, I was furniture, and the deal was already done. You know what I mean? They called the place the Palisade, a rooftop box of glass over San Francisco. The kind of room where the chandeliers look like frozen waterfalls, and the city wraps around you like a prize ribbon. It was supposed to be a celebration dinner. Hoshiko AI's surgical robotics linking arms with Valancourt Biotech's global distribution headlines and handshakes, and that magic number. They floated every few minutes like a charm against doubt. 800 million, 800 million, say it enough, and it feels inevitable. At the end of the walnut table sat Derek Caldwell, tall, camera-ready, the smile of a man who's won more than he's learned, and beside him Trent Langley, younger, harder-eyed, a CFO who wears impatience like cologne. Across from them, Kamiko founder and CEO, silver hair, neat indigo silk, quiet, a presence that didn't apologize for silence. She chose to speak through her aide, a sentence at a time, measured and clean, which for some men is like a mirror they can't stand to look into. I moved like I'd been trained, quiet steps, eyes soft, hands steady, topping off a glass before the need formed on the face, because good service is a kind of mind reading and sometimes a kind of armor. The comments started slow and got ugly fast. Sweetheart, more of that Syrah, a little joke about replacing a human with a chatbot. A bigger joke about negotiating with a bonsai tree, yeah, that happened. And I felt that familiar heat under the ribs, the kind you learn to swallow when tuition is due and rent is due and nobody's asking where your voice went. I grew up in Kyoto before we moved back, spent summers folding paper cranes in classrooms that smelled like chalk and cedar, learned Japanese before I learned to flinch, learned how respect sounds in the space you leave for someone else's words. Back in the States, I learned a different song. The smile that never calls back the test, graded twice because excellence looks suspicious. In my skin, the interview that loves your story but not your presence. And I learned how to disappear when disappearing was the only way to make it to tomorrow. So I disappeared that night until I couldn't. Trent leaned in and said the quiet part loud. Do you understand? Like he was sounding out words for a toddler. And Derek laughed because it was safer than thinking. Kamiko breathed out one line of Japanese that wasn't meant for the table, soft as a prayer threaded through steam. Is there anyone here who sees me? It landed in me like a bell. My manager Foster drifted up behind my shoulder and whispered what every protocol manual says: don't get involved. Do your job, stay small. I nodded because I was raised. Right then I walked anyway, because there's a moment when being quiet turns into helping a lie hold its shape, and I won't be part of that, not anymore. I bowed to Kamiko first, the way my teachers taught me when respect is the sentence and language just fills in the edges. Then I spoke in the Japanese that still lives in my bones. Hayashi-sama, forgive me. I know I'm not part of this meeting, but silence in the face of disrespect is its own kind of betrayal. Let me help if you'll allow it. She didn't smile, she didn't perform. She just met my eyes and nodded once, and the room tilted a few degrees. Because power does that, when it remembers where it belongs. Derek set his glass down a little too hard. Trent tried to laugh and bit air, and I slid the leather folder toward me like a waiter handling plates and secrets. I'm not a lawyer, but I've proofread enough of my mother's briefs and slept next to enough library lamps to recognize a knife dressed like a ribbon, so I flipped to 7B and felt my chest go steady. This clause gives Valancourt the right to renegotiate all intellectual property licenses after the merger, vague enough to sell off her patents while calling it optimization. And you know what? That isn't standard. That's a trap with a welcome mat on it. Derek said it was flexibility, everyone does it. And I shook my head, because flexibility has two keys. When it's honest, this section gives you both. I turned to section 12 and said the words like counting off beats, non-compete so wide it swallows a decade. Not just startups, but teaching consulting, speaking every path a woman like Kamiko could take to keep shaping the field she built. You're not buying her company, you're trying to erase her from the industry and sell the silence as synergy. Trent aimed a joke at my head and missed something about the help rewriting corporate law, and I didn't give him my eyes because that's a currency and you spend it wisely. Page after page, polite sentences with sharp edges, non-disparagement written like a muzzle assignment of moral rights tucked where you'd hope a tired translator would glide past a clause that would strip her name from derivatives of her own code. The air got dense, the kind you push through, and then Kamiko's aide placed a small silver recorder on the table and pressed play, and here's the twist. Everyone pretends they don't see coming until it hits the wall. Derek's voice rolled out clean-cut. The incentive clauses, she'll never know the difference. The translator does the heavy lifting, and Trent's laugh, riding shotgun, we feed her whatever we want. Call it global access, maybe donate a wing. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed because guilt bounces farther than truth in rooms like that. Trent stood like a fire alarm and barked about illegal recordings, and I said what I knew. Fraud is illegal too. And Derek sat very still, which for a man like him is the loudest admission you'll ever get. That's when Foster tried to earn his paycheck. The hard way stormed in red-faced, fired me for leaving my station, told me security would walk me out, told me rules are rules, and I broke them, and I was about to say the line I'd regret or never stop repeating when the door opened and a new voice put the whole night back on its feet. Mai Jones, executive director of the North American Innovation Alliance, one of Hoshiko's key partners, calm as a surgeon and twice as precise, stepped inside and said, "Actually, she's not going anywhere." The room remembered how to breathe. Mai had been in the main dining room listening, waiting to see if the rumors about Valancourt were smoke or fire, and she let the voicemail do the talking while she did the deciding. Foster backed up because power is a tide, and when it shifts, you either move or drown. Mai looked at me like a person, not a problem, and said the thing that still lives rent-free in the center of my chest. You were the only one who understood what integrity looks like. Then came the part nobody sees coming, because we've been trained not to look for it. Kamiko stood, took my hand in both of hers, and offered me a job on the spot, not as a mascot, not as a headline, but as part of Hoshiko's global strategy team, cultural liaison, and executive aid tuition covered anywhere I choose, housing near the office, a salary that says we see what you did and we know what it's worth. I said yes with a voice that finally felt like it belonged to me, thanked her in Japanese for seeing me when I was trying to disappear, watched Trent sit down like gravity owed him an apology, watched Derek stare at his own reflection in a water glass and not like what he found. Fallout moves faster than dessert. Within 48 hours, the recording sat in the right inboxes with the right subject lines. The board at Valancourt held a meeting. Nobody live tweeted. Derek was gone by lunch. Trent was gone by the weekend. Investors asked for explanations and got statements instead. And the press did what the press does when a story comes pre-edited. From server to savior, the Waitress, who stopped an $800 million power grab, poetic justice, viral justice, internet justice. Headlines loved the symmetry. A woman who never raised her voice, a woman who refused to swallow hers. Two men who bet against language and lost to a sentence they never bothered to learn. And I won't lie, it felt good, but it didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like work that finally paid off, like the bill arriving after a long meal, and everyone at the table realizing who'd been covering the check the whole time. A week later, I walked into a new office with a badge that opened rooms I used to clean a desk by a window, a notebook from Kamiko's aid for the things we say between the lines, a pilot project that might cut surgical wait times in a county hospital. Real work, the kind that asks for patience and pays in people. As for justice, people love to plate that word and slide it across the table like a perfect dessert. I don't know, I just know the balance in that private room got corrected, even if only by a few degrees, and sometimes that's all you can ask for, in a world that tilts the wrong way by default. Here's where I leave you, and I'll be honest, it's not a neat bow. It's a question that keeps me honest when the room gets quiet. If Kamiko had spoken English all night, would they have treated her any better? Or would the target have just moved to her accent, her gender, her restraint? If I had stayed silent, would that contract have sailed through and been called inevitable because comfort loves that word? And when you look around your rooms, your meetings, your family tables, your group chats, who don't you see until they stand up? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong. Tell me the moment you spoke when you were supposed to stay small, or the time you realized you'd been talking over the one person who saw the whole board. If this story hit a nerve, share it, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're not done pulling back the curtain on rooms like this. And if it made you uncomfortable, good. That's where change starts. You know what I mean?